against Christopher Juliano playing Black-White Angel Control. Overturf is on your right. Juliano is on your left, and it looks like Chris is on 6 cards here.
And when we have new standard formats, it's not just an issue of what are the new cards, but what cards have rotated out. The rotation of Dromoka's Command is a huge deal, and I think it will make the format a lot more hospitable to random enchantments like Fever Visions that were a little problematic in the previous format.
You'll see each player, start off with a creature land. For Overturf, it was a Wandering Fumarole. For Juliano, it was a Shambling Vent. Overturf's going to play a copy of Take Inventory. Accumulated Knowledge, that is not, but it's close.
Close enough for Ryan's purposes.
That's correct. Another Shambling Vent here for Juliano. And one of the things that you're going to see right away here as these players try to get their board set up. Overturf's going to play a copy of Fevered Visions. Both players are playing enemy colors, so they get access to those enemy-colored creature lands, which is a big draw to being enemy-colored.
Oh, and on top of the fast lands that just got printed as well, that sort of replaced the Apocalypse Pain lands that we had in Magic Origins.
Now, you said that's game to Fevered Visions. Now, Fevered Visions, we can read it. At the beginning of each player's end step, that player draws a card. If the player is your opponent and has 4 or more cards in hand, Fevered Visions deals 2 damage to him or her. Patrick, why is that game?
I've played with this card a lot against Black-White control decks, and they either have Anguish Unmaking on the spot, and even then it's not great for them, or they're dead. That's been my history.
That's been your history with
See if it's any different this time.
Okay. There are new cards after all. Storm Chaser Mage to come in for a point of damage. Overturf's going to play another copy of Wandering Fumarole, and now here is a copy of Blessed Alliance. Juliano's going to use that to gain 4 life. A Concealed Courtyard, the draw there for Christopher. That'll enter the battlefield tapped. Here's Ruinous Path to take care of the Storm Chaser Mage. And Fever Visions will trigger. Juliano going to take 2 yet again as Overturf will untap. He's at 20 life. He'll draw a card. Picked up another copy of Storm Chaser Mage. Overturf will play the Mage. The follow-up here in just a moment will be a Galvanic Bombardment, which will not kill the Storm Chaser Mage. It will give it another point of power, however, thanks to Prowess. And now Overturf will draw a card, given the Fevered Visions, and pass that turn back over to Christopher Juliano. Juliano obviously under the gun here in a big way.
And playing a deck chock full of sorceries and having to tap out to keep his hand size low, which Juliano's under pressure to do now, will, down the line, potentially for Overturf, open up the door for Wandering Fumaroles to start getting in as well.
Here's a Thaya's Lancer.
Puts a card in his hand. That's a mistake.
Well, it doesn't have to, but he's going to, it looks like. That's a pretty good card.
Yeah. Linvala is a great one to get here.
Now, we saw players try the Lancer package previously. Maybe a little too slow, a little too clunky, given what Bant Company was up to.
Yes.
I'm curious to see if this is an option again now in this particular format.
I believe it's gotten better.
Overturf is drawing a card.
Better by enough is a question.
That's the question, yeah. When you can have, a 4/4 with first strike that tutors, you obviously want to see how good it can be. Here's a Tormenting Voice. Overturf will draw 2 cards after discarding a land. Fiery Temper among those cards. Also looks like a copy of Bedlam Reveler. That's a card I think a lot of people may have forgotten existed.
Yeah, 1 copy here in Overturf's deck.
Overturf saying on social media earlier this week, he was pretty happy with the deck that he was going to be playing here this weekend.
Well, this is right in his wheelhouse.
Yeah, very Delver-esque.
He loves doing this kind of thing.
Two copies of Incendiary Flow in hand. Looks like he will play 1. Looks like that's going upstairs. This one's going upstairs as well, and I think the plan now is I'm going to be able to have to at least try to power through this Linvala.
Yeah, and there's no real reason to get the Lancer off the table here. Overturf happy to race that. At this point, he's just trying to burn him out. Juliano's going to pick up some life here from the Linvala, but with Overturf drawing so many cards, unclear if it's going to be enough.
Juliano did fall down to 5. He does have a copy of Gisela in hand. And we know about the Linvala that he searched for with the Lancers. For Overturf at a very healthy 20. And for Juliano, just getting those expensive yet powerful cards out of his hand is proving to be rather difficult.
Black-White control does not handle Fevered Visions well.
And this is one of the things, Patrick, I think is going to happen a lot in this format. Now, with Dromoka's Command gone, the kind of looming I'm not allowed to play enchantments type thing, that's off the table now for the most part.
Yeah, decks that want to play a single enchantment, I think, are going to be a lot more attractive. And the top of the list from the last format might have been these blue-red Thermo Alchemist decks because they played Fever Visions in spite of the prevalence of Dromoka's Command. Because the card was just so good when it was unchecked that it was worth swallowing some losses to Dromoka's Command.
There's Linvala. There will be a trigger. Juliano's going to gain 5 life so long as he does remember. And now you see the Lancer's going to come into the red zone as well. So it's 10-16. And there will be a Fevered Visions trigger here for Chris in just a second. Chris just wanted to make sure he does want to attack because there's a little bit of concern thanks to the Wandering Fumarole. And now we head back over to Overturf. He's drawn another copy of Galvanic Bombardment. Unsurprisingly, good multiples.
Good analysis.
Thank you very much.
Love it.
I am wide awake after that. After that quest bar, I am wide awake.
That is just true.
Yeah.
We cannot argue about that.
That's why I get paid the big bucks. Another Fevered Visions. That'll be a trigger. Galvanic Bombardment. Galvanic Bombardment. That's 3 Prod triggers for the turn. Here is an attack for 4. And Overturf says, I'd like to draw a couple cards, thank you. So 1 and 2. Incendiary Flow and Fiery Temper in hand. Overturf does have the ability to present lethal here. As Juliano will draw.
Want to just comment here that Juliano cast a Blessed Alliance and a Linvala this game.
Oh, yeah.
And is still getting burned out pretty easily.
Oh,
Fevered
yeah.
Visions against Black-White. If they don't have Anguish on making on the spot or something similar, it's often a runaway.
Now, that card's pretty nice. They're an Essence Extraction. Was curious to see how many people were going to play that this weekend. It's a new one from Kaladesh. Lightning Helix, it is not, obviously, but this is a good option for black decks that they did not have before.
Yeah, I mean, it's in theory well positioned for this kind of matchup, but Overturf's draw here just too fast on the play with Fever Visions and Juliano not doing something through turns 1 or 2.
Overturf's going to show a burn spell, and what you can't see right now is Patrick is firing off finger guns, which means that Ryan Overturf is currently up a game here over Christopher Juliano, as Blue-Red Thermal Alchemist, with obviously a very heavy burn slant, is up a game very quickly over Black-White Angel Control. We're going to go to the sideboards here, as Juliano looks to be in a pretty difficult matchup, and you think about all the life that he gained over the course of that game. The thing he could not do is take care of the copies of Fevered Vision. So we're going to see if he does have options in his sideboard. You see 3 Transgress the Mind, 2 Fragmentize, 2 Filigree Familiar, 2 Stasis Snare, 2 Gideon Ally Zendikar, a copy of Bruna the Fading Light, a Ruinous Path, a Deadweight, and a Thalia. Heretic Athar. What do we like, Patrick?
I think the 3 copies of Transgress the Mind are pretty good in this matchup for, stripping out certainly Fever Visions, and then there's some top-end cards as well you can go after. The 2 copies of Gideon Ally of Zendikar are also pretty good in this matchup. Overturf doesn't really want to be managing Planeswalkers and doesn't put a lot on the battlefield, so it's a way for Juliano to speed up the clock, especially in games where Fever Visions is on the other side of the battlefield.
For Ryan Overturf, he's got 4 Negates, 2 Ceremonious Rejection, 2 Weaver of Lightning, 2 Chandra Torch of Defiance, 2 Handward Garrison, a Bedlam Reveler, a Summary Dismissal, and a Singleton Lightning Axe.
My history with blue-red decks playing against black-white in the previous standard format, Negate was awesome for the matchup. They play a bunch of expensive spells to begin with, and then also if you're able to protect Fever Visions, you can run away with the game pretty easily. This seems like a great matchup for 2 copies of Chandra Torch of Defiance as well. Juliano doesn't play that much the battlefield. He may cut some of his removal spells as well, and if Juliano's not able to pressure Chandra, Overturf can run away with the game with that as well. I think the 1 copy of Bedlam Reveler going up to the 2nd copy is great for a matchup that's going to be a little bit on the slower side.
Well, those are the options there for each player. And as they do sideboard here for game number 2, Christopher Juliano will be on the play. And we are going to talk about StarCityGames.com Game Night, the very popular promotion. And we've got some cool things to talk about here. We're on our lapels this month. We've got ourselves a little hedge hog-a-hog.
It is October 1, so now we are in the October game night. You can head over to go.starcitygames.com/game night for more information. Every month we generate new pins and tokens that we send to the stores that are signed up for game night. Stores can then run game night however they want to, any day of the week, any format. Just get players in the store for some fun and friendly magic. Again, Hedge Hog-a-Hog is the October kit. We got a couple coming down the pipeline here. In November, we got Mole Warden. Do we have December?
Do we have it? Drum roll,
I've
please.
not seen it. And Fintuition. I get it. That's the kit in December. Anyhow, go to StarCityGames.com/game night for more information and find the game night closest to you. Stores, if you want to get signed up for game night, contact your Star City Games in-store play representative.
So you get it's a play. On,
I get it.
It's a play on intuition.
I got it.
Do you get it?
Took me a minute.
Beautiful. Well done. That is old Fintuition here for game night. Happy to bring those to you. As Patrick did mention, go to StarCityGames.com/game night for more information. We can learn a little bit more about Christopher Juliano as well. Number 19 on our SCG Tour Player of the Year leaderboard is a 24-year-old from, come on.
Poquog?
Poquog, thank you. Well, I know you're from the area.
I don't
roughly.
know. Not from every podunk town in New York State.
Poquog, New York is where Juliano does reside with his one open top 8. And unfortunately for him, I think 2 weekends ago, he was expecting there to be a 2 next to that number.
Oh yeah, that was brutal. I mean, he was at the top of the standings, I believe, 10-0 at one point,
Yep.
and 11-0, and just not able to get it done with a very spell-heavy version of Burn and Modern. Still a great performance, but I think he was probably expecting a top 8 berth early on in day 2, and things just fell apart.
Yeah, it was a tough final loss there, losing to Tom Ross playing for top 8. Tom Ross, again, playing 8-rack 2 weeks ago when we were in Orlando. And Juliano just came up a little bit short, but we have seen, I think, from him pretty consistent performances. That's why he's got the number 19 next to his name. And we'll see how this deck is able to perform for him this week. And I know a lot of people have been looking into Black-White Control. It's easy to bring over from the previous format. And there will be some changes, of course. You see the Thalia's Lancer package that he's got going on in his deck, but there are a lot of good options at his disposal from those 2 colors.
Definitely, and the Fast Land probably a pretty big. The Fast Land probably a pretty big upgrade for this deck over Quetzalcoatlus too, because the deck does have sensitive colored mana requirements, and the games where you draw Quetzalcoatlus, this deck, at least in my watching it and playing against it, did take a lot of damage off of its pain lands, more than the other decks in Standard that were playing pain lands. So being able to switch that land, I think, is a substantial upgrade for this deck.
For those wondering, home is pronounced Poquag.
Poquag.
Chris did let us know it's Poquag, as he'll start things off with a Shambling Vent. Over to Overturf, we will go. He will play a copy of Highland Lake. And now we go back over to Ryan after a Plains there from Chris. This is a take inventory. Ryan will draw a card. He'll pass the turn back.
Ryan cannot be happier casting that card, I am sure.
Let's see what we have here. That's the Filigree Familiar. Okay. That's a newbie. It's a nice one. Kitchen thinks this is not. But it is still relatively good, as here's a Fevered Visions. We'll take a look at the Filigree Familiar, as I think this is a card we're going to see quite a bit in Standard as well. Fits into a lot of different decks, looking to sideboard against aggressive decks, or maybe even something to emerge through. The 2/2 Fox for 3 colorless mana. When it enters the battlefield, you gain 2 life, and when it dies, you get to draw a card. This is a pretty good start here for Juliano. Yes, he's taking damage from Fevered Visions, but now he's got a creature on the battlefield here in Kalitas that Overturf does have to kill. Fortunately for him, he's got a Collective Defiance to do just that. He'll be able to escalate it as well, deal some damage over to Juliano, and now draw a card from Fevered Visions.
So not only is it good for Juliano to be playing with these threats that gain life, he does want to pressure Overturf. Just as important is the fact that he's tapping out early in the game and doing stuff. The last game, he was on his heels for way too long, didn't do anything for the first few turns of the game. His hand got saturated with Fever Visions cards, and he couldn't deploy everything enough. This game, he's tapping out, and you can see he's almost close to getting out from under the trigger on Fever Visions.
Yeah, it looks like he has 4 cards in hand. He'll draw a card. That'll be card number 5. And now we're going to head back over to Overturf. The card he actually drew was a copy of Blessed Alliance, which will allow him to gain 4 at the end of turn if he'd like. So not a bad spot to be in.
Filigree Familiar putting Onulet to shame, which I mentioned because Onulet came up in the broadcast.
It did 2 weeks ago.
Yes. In reference to its champion.
Yes, the very powerful amulet. Overturf.
This card is better.
And you said I had great analysis. Galvanic Bombardment works well in multiples, and Filigree Familiar is better than Amulet. We'll have more for you guys later during the broadcast.
We got 2 whole days of this.
Yes, we do.
Or I guess rather you have.
Fiery Temper here.
You at home.
Yeah.
Have to sit through 2 days of this.
Overturf did use that via Madness, as he did discard for his turn after the Fevered Visions trigger. So here comes the Filigree Familiar. He was able to play that Fiery Temper on the cheap. Juliano got a lot of life gain in his deck, it looks like.
Now, Overturf in a pretty interesting spot here in that he can kind of sit back. He's sitting on a negate, and he's sitting on a Lightning Axe, so he can kind of handle whatever Juliano plays and just play more of a blue-red, kind of weird, reactive burn sort of strategy rather than tap out every turn and try to burn out Juliano as fast as possible, which we saw in the first game.
Yeah, like what he's kind of doing right now. You saw Lightning Axe plus Fiery Temper take care of Linvala plus Filigree Familiar, which means that Juliano does have to draw a card from the Familiar dying, which means that Fever Visions is kind of back online again. So we're going to head back over to Ryan. He's got another blue-red land there. It's a Spire Bluff Canal. That's a newbie. It's a fast land. Overturf will draw, pass that turn back over to Juliano.
And Overturf has picked up one of his sideboard copies of Chandra, and Chandra plus Negate, great setup against black-white control.
Pretty nice 1-2 punch for sure.
Negate is excellent against this deck. They play a lot of expensive spells. They're relevant, and they need those spells to answer the best things that you bring to the table, like Planeswalkers and Fever Visions.
Juliano with a bit of a grin on his face. I think he's had a very good start this game. But oddly enough, when he played Linvala, it wasn't gaining any life because Overturf is actually lower than Juliano at this stage. And one of the cards that he has in his hand, it's 2 copies. It's Succumb to Temptation. So that one is, I guess one could argue, the replacement for Read the Bones.
I think there's going to be a lot of pressure in this format to hang back on instant speed removal too because of Smuggler's Copter.
Yeah.
So instant speed card drawing, even double color mana requirements and not the most exciting rate, I think this card's going to have a home all over the place.
So now we are going to go back over to Overturf as Juliano does not have much to do at this stage. Juliano is going to watch Overturf play a copy of Thermal Alchemist. There is a mountain, and there will be a trigger here. That trigger will resolve from Fevered Visions, and now here is Essence Extraction. Will Overturf have any interest in fighting over this? I would be surprised if he does, and he does not.
No, I think that negate is stop something like Sordin, some large planeswalker.
Okay.
Protect Fevered Visions or protect Chandra. He's not going to pick any little battles here with those negates. They're too precious.
Yeah, one thing you do know about Black-White Angel Control, even though it is a sideboarding game, they've got plenty of removal.
Exactly, and Juliano's got a hand of 7, 8, 9 cards. There's no way he can't find another removal spell for the Thermal Alchemist, so just better to let that one go.
A very painful Succumb to Temptation will resolve. Juliano's going to fund on 18, but more importantly, 2 more cards in his hand. A land, I believe a Forsaken Sanctuary. Now here is Gisela. Notable that it is a 4-3, not a 4-4 for Gisela, the Broken Blade.
This card would not be able to go out the door as a 4-4. It's very important for the red removal, the cheap ones, to be able to tag it.
It does have Flying First Drake and Lifelink. It is also now in the graveyard. Actually, excuse me, it is exiled thanks to Incendiary Flow. You'll get a Prowess trigger for the Storm Chaser Mage now. Overturf will come over for 2 in the air, triggers Fevered Visions, and pass the turn back as Juliano's at 14.
And that's an especially good one to exile as well.
Yes.
Break up that loop, that synergy.
Yeah, with Bruna to prevent Gisela from working its way into the equation as we go over to Juliano, who I believe is drawing a Planeswalker now. You mentioned Sorin. It's something you always want to be wary of. Concealed Courtyard in hand. And actually, he does have a copy of Bruna in hand, so it is a good thing it was Incendiary Flow.
Yep.
Good call there, Patrick.
Still got it. Still got it.
Hard to argue you ever lost it. We'll see how Juliano wants to move forward on this particular turn.
And you can see just kind of how much control Overturf has over the terms of engagement with Fever Visions in play. Mm-hmm. The burden's on Juliano to act first, and Black-White control really wants to be reacting to things, not being the proactive deck.
It's 6 mana. It's a Sorin, Grim Nemesis. And that's not resolving. Negate's going to take care of that. Don't think you can let that one slide through. Anything else for Juliano here? We can't forget about Shambling Vents, because there's a Grasp. That'll take care of the Storm Chaser Mage. There will be a Fevered Visions trigger for Juliano. He'll lose 2. He'll go to 12 as Overturf will draw. Is it time to pull the trigger on the Chandra?
Board's relatively clear.
Can protect it relatively well. I guess doesn't do a nice job protecting it around Shambling Vent.
You at least have, I mean, if your Chandra's going up to 5, then you don't have any immediate concern.
The plus, high collective. Defiance.
Not a bad one.
Seen worse, but I think he's just going to let that go because he wants to leave the mana up for summary dismissal, which means that Juliano will take 2, fall down to 10, and now we're going to head back Christopher's way. You do see Chandra all those modes on that powerful Planeswalker. Seven mana, Bruno. Ryan can't summary dismissal that fast enough. Take care of the trigger, too. I don't think so. Summary dismissal, maybe a card we're going to see a little bit more of now. We know how good it is against Emrakul and other various Eldrazi, but perhaps it's got a home in other places.
Well, seems pretty well situated against Black-White Control. Again, a deck that's trying to tap out for a lot of 6s and 7s.
You see exile all other spells and counter all abilities. They're from summary dismissal, so stopping everything that was going to take place there. Now here is a Tormenting Voice after a Storm Chaser Mage. Does Overturf want to play another Storm Chaser Mage? Keep in mind that the Chandra did reveal a Wandering Fumarole. Can't play that, so Chandra's going to deal at least 2. Here's an attack for 3 in the air. Play a Wandering Fumarole.
That Wandering Fumarole, not trivial, by the way, if Juliano needs to commit a lot of mana on his own turn to be able to handle the board.
I believe Overturf may have missed his Fever Vision's trigger. Not sure if he missed his Chandra or not, but we do have Juliano at 3 at this stage. If that does change, we'll, of course, let you know at home. Juliano will draw. Picked up a copy of Grasp of Darkness. Yep, and that is going to do it as Christopher has nothing to work with in his hand. And Ryan Overturf is going to win this match over Christopher Juliano, 2-0. Blue-Red Thermal Alchemist will take care of Black-White Angel Control. And for Overturf, it's a good pairing at a good time. I'm not sure if Juliano's deck has a great way to deal with Fevered Visions.
Yeah, I mean, you're looking